Have you ever wondered what happens in that tiny little space right before a thought pops into your head? Today, we're going to dive into something that takes us right to that boundary, to a place it calls the edge of knowing.
And it all kicks off with something super simple, almost jarringly direct. Sit still. Now, this isn't about just, relaxing or meditating. The whole idea here is that our constant movement, both in our bodies and in our minds, is actually this incredible distraction. It's a way we keep ourselves from seeing what's really going on under the hood.
So here's the core idea. There's something beneath thought. And this isn't some mystical out there concept. It's just sequential. It's like the raw data that exists before your brain jumps in and starts sticking labels on everything, trying to make sense of the world.
Let's actually walk through that for a second. I mean, think about it. Before your mind slaps the word happy onto a feeling or tree onto that thing you're looking at, what is actually there? What is that raw sensation? Well, in that little gap, there's this moment of just pure, unfiltered experience. This source we're looking at argues that this is where everything really begins. It's a place we almost never hang out in because our brains are just so fast. They're built to name it, file it away, and get on to the next thing.
And yeah, that whole idea of a pre-label space, it really starts to shake up what we think we know. Which, funny enough, brings us right to our first section, the illusion of knowing.
Okay, so get this. The argument here is that what we call knowledge, it's not really us seeing reality directly. It's just memory. We're basically looking at the world through this filter of patterns we've already seen before, patterns that at some point we just decided to stop questioning. Let's take a huge concept like truth. The actual raw experience might be this really complex feeling of things just clicking, a deep sense of alignment inside you. But what do? We slap this one simple, heavy word on it, truth. And just like that, our own language squashes this huge, nuanced feeling into a single, kind of limiting box. So this brings up a really big question. For you, for me, for everyone. If everything we know is just a big feedback loop that reinforces what we already think, then how does anything new ever happen? Where does real creativity or a genuinely new idea even come from? Okay, so if knowing in the traditional sense is kind of a trap, what's the alternative? Well, that leads us perfectly into our next section, where we'll explore a totally different way of operating, awareness beyond identity. All right, so how do we actually get to that pre-thought space? It's not as abstract as it sounds. There's actually a pretty practical 4-step process. First, you just don't react. Instead, and this is step 2, you just watch the reaction as it starts to form inside you. Then, step 3, you don't think, you just let it be. And finally, step 4, you watch the thought itself pop up. And look, this isn't about being lazy or passive. It's actually a kind of hyper-precision. And here's the magic trick, the real payoff. The second you can actually see the process, the moment you can observe a thought or an emotion, you're not in it anymore. You're separate from it. So if you can watch the process of anger bubbling up, you're no longer just angry. You're not controlled by it. That's a game changer. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds very internal, very personal. But what's wild is how this stuff has a huge real-world impact. And that brings us to our next section, which is all about this idea. Your state is your message. The argument here is that any time we interact with another person, our words are actually the least important part of the conversation. The real communication is biological. It's happening on the level of our nervous systems, which are zapping signals back and forth way faster and way more powerfully than we could ever do with just words. Come on, you've totally felt this, right? You're with someone and they're saying all the right things, but you just get this feeling that something is off. That's not your brain picking that up. That's your body, your nervous system reading their internal state. We're not reacting to the words, we're reacting to the person's real internal vibe. And this effect is like almost physical. If you're walking around with an unstable internal state, you're anxious, your thoughts are all over the place, you literally broadcast that instability to other people. But if you can get yourself into a grounded, coherent state, you become this kind of regulating force. You can actually change the energy of an entire room just by being there. No words needed. But, okay, this leads to a really interesting problem, a kind of tension at the heart of all of this. Let's dive into that in our next section, the paradox of trying. So there's a really important difference we need to make here between influence and control. Control is about using force, pushing to get what you want. But influence, real influence, That comes from something totally different: internal alignment. It's that state of just being solid, where what you think, what you feel, and what you say are all singing the same tune. And here's the paradox, right? The moment you try to be aligned, the effort itself messes it all up. It creates noise. So the real challenge isn't about trying or not trying. It's much trickier. It's, can you do the work? Can you act without your ego getting all wrapped up in the result, without needing to be the person who is aligned? Okay, so this is where everything we've been talking about starts to come together. Let's get into our final section, the final realization. And it all leads to this massive shift in how you see everything. We spend so much of our lives looking for the true meaning of things, as if it's some treasure buried out there. But the big realization is meaning isn't found, it's assigned. It's just another label that we project onto the world. And man, once you really get that, you're free. You're not a prisoner of it anymore.
And this is where we start to pull apart the biggest assumption of all, our own identity. So, first step, you are not what you think. We've already seen that, right? If you can watch your thoughts, then you can't be them. There has to be a separation.
But then it goes one step further, and this one is a real mind bender. You aren't even the one observing the thoughts. I mean, think about it. If you're aware that you're observing, then who or what is doing the being aware? This is where language just kind of breaks down. And here it is, the final piece. You're not the thoughts. You're not the watcher of the thoughts. You are the space, the pure awareness in which both the thinking and the watching are happening. It's this huge, expansive idea of what you fundamentally are. So, we're not going to wrap this up with a tidy little summary. Instead, we'll leave you with this instruction, this personal experiment to try for yourself. Notice what remains when you do nothing. Thanks for coming on this journey with us to the edge of knowing.